All right, grown-ups, it's just our time. I love the babies, but to help you, I gotta speak my mind. This segment's here to help you grow with book reviews, lessons, and things you'll be glad to know. If your little one's restless or looking to play, send them to my other playlist. The read-alouds there will brighten their day. Welcome to the Teacher Lady Speaks. I'm Erica M. Burrell, the Teacher Lady, your fairy godparent when it comes to sharing joyful stories and growing young minds. Here we use my experience teaching tiny humans to help enhance yours through resources, insight, and honest reflection from a well-seasoned educator. Hey, that's me. Who understands just how hard love work can be. Think of this episode like a lesson plan for this week's topic. It is here to answer the question, how do I get my child to get it, whatever it may be? That's where I offer support. Now, today's topic is all about grief. We've been talking about grief all week. We began with 2 books. One of them is A Puppy's Tale by Grant Merritt. We have both the read aloud as well as the behind the book review segment, as well as our featured story, Goodbye, a first conversation about grief. And that story, we have the behind the book segment where we go beyond the pages to get to the heart of the story. So we've read, we've reviewed, and now we're wrapping it all up with this episode of The Teacher Lady Speaks, a crash course in helping your child to process their grief and understand what exactly it means. You ready? Let's grow. So if I was tasked with explaining grief to a 5-year-old, I would say, have you ever lost something? Have you ever misplaced your favorite friendship bracelet and you had a really hard time accepting that it was gone and you just felt like something was missing? Well, that's a type of grief. Grief is the emotion that we feel when we've lost something, when we can't have it anymore. Now, you might grieve because a person passes away or you have to say goodbye to a pet, like in A Puppy's Tale, but you might also grieve any significant change in your life. So, what's something that's recently changed for you? And they might say, well, my bedtime, so I can't watch TV as much anymore, or they might answer with a new school that they go to or what have you. And as long as that answer is associated with a sadness or something that is missing, I would label it as grief. That it would be my introduction to a child in terms of how to form what grief is. Grief is the emotion you feel as a result of losing something or someone. It is worth noting that grief comes in stages. Some people, it never fully goes away. I have lost a lot of people, and I can attest in my life that grief is not something that disappears. I would also make it clear that grief looks different for everybody. So my daughter does not respond to situations in a way in which people would expect. There is almost a delay with how she responds to things. And so if you gift her something, she might not say thank you right away. It's not because she's not appreciative. It's because her brain is literally processing all that's around her. The person who gave her the gift, what the gift is, the weather, the smells. There is so much going on that it takes her a moment to recognize I was gifted with something. I'm supposed to say thank you because that's the social norm. That is true for every single situation with my child. She will never respond how one might anticipate her to respond. And so when I'm teaching students and I'm working with families, I always teach them to let their children know that there is not one way to look like you're grieving. There isn't one way to look like you're happy or you're angry or you're sad. These are the typical ways that people show it, like crying, like reverting to themselves, like being very timid. That is not the only way that your emotions might show when it comes to grieving or any emotions. What are schools required to teach? Y'all know this is my favorite part. So in the state of California, it is recommended that we do some social emotional learning. Nothing is mandated. So grief would fall underneath social emotional learning or how to respond to situations. There might be units at your individual district level that covers like community or feelings or emotions, and you might find something between, in between that, but there is nothing that is going to make your school or a teacher teach about processing emotions like grief. The same is true, because y'all know I always do the state of Texas and I always do the state of California. The same is true for the state of Texas. There is no mandated curriculum that says you have to teach about processing emotions. You have to teach about bereavement or grief or sadness or any of that. So that now means that at the district level, they might decide to do something. Like, I've been hired to come in from a specific school district to teach about how children should process emotions, or how teachers can help children to process their emotions. But that is a school by school basis, and those are usually paid by the PTA. It's usually not the actual school or that district paying me. It's usually the parent teacher association who wants their children and the students in that school to get the information. So if you want your children to be able to name their emotions, to be able to process grief, to be able to understand it, y'all know the word, what I'm about to say, you are going to have to supplement. I will have resources at the end of this video to tell you some ways that you can supplement, but it is important that the things that are important for you to know and for your child to know, you are taking the lead on teaching them. Now, that said, some schools have a guidance counselor to which you can ask and inquire about that guidance counselor starting to teach classes, not only around grief, but around processing emotions. It's not even specific to children, baby. I know a lot of adults who cannot articulate themselves well at all. They do not communicate well. Articulating is not just words, right? We communicate all sorts of ways, but they were never taught how to process their emotions. So those people who are a ticking time bomb, you kind of got to walk on eggshells around them. You don't want to say the wrong thing. You don't want to joke too hard because you don't know how they're going to respond. It is because they have not been taught the tools in order to process their emotions. When things happen to children, like a person dies, a pet has to go away, you have to move and they're leaving their friends, or their parent walks out of their life, they're now being put up for adoption. When things happen that are hard for children, if they don't have the tools to be able to process that, to be able to articulate their feelings, it will build up. And that's how you get angry adults. That's how you get adults with no patience, because at some point, things took place that were never addressed and dealt with. Grief is typically one of those things. The first resource I want to talk about today is a nonprofit organization. It is based out of Oregon, but they do have online resources. What they offer is support and services around grief that emphasizes a non-clinical model. So more like peer-to-peer conversations, groups, things of that nature. And what I appreciate most is that they offer trainings and professional services to people who are directly connected to children. And so if you're an educator, you're like, I don't know where to start, I don't know how to help, my background is not in psychology, this is a good starting point, so that you are more equipped to have these conversations when they come across your desk, if you're an educator, or have these conversations when it comes to your child. Because even if they're not grieving right now, at some point in their life, they are likely to experience great loss, great change, and or grief. Okay, so let's be prepared. What they say, you stay ready, you ain't got to get ready. That's what we're talking about today. How do we stay ready? Okay, the second organization I want to bring your attention to is the National Alliance for Children's Grief. So this is a national nonprofit that supports professionals and organizations who serve grieving children and family, with the mission to raise awareness about the needs of grieving children and to provide education, advocacy, and resources. They do everything from trainings, they do conferences, research, and they have a directory of grief centers nationwide. The third is one that I do adore and have utilized, and that is the Sesame Street and Communities Grief Toolkit. So this is a resource from Sesame Street's workshop specifically designed to help children cope with grief and loss. It includes videos, printables, activities, storybooks, conversations, so on and so forth. And the purpose is to help educators and caregivers talk to children about death, the emotions that come with it, and how to remember their loved ones. I like it because it's simple language. Y'all know how I feel about simple language, and it is a way that you can use this activity, to get the child to open up. Children open up in different ways. And when I say open up, I mean express themselves. You got ones that are very talkative. Like my kid is extremely talkative when it comes to a bunch of things that are surface level. Okay, deeper conversations we got to dig a little bit. And then there are other children who are they shut down, right? They shut down, and it's hard to reach or connect with them at all. A valuable resource when you are trying to figure out how to get your child or your students to open up is to find out what allows them to feel comfortable enough to be able to do so. So these are some methods that are often used even in like speech-based or talk-based therapy, right? Or they used to call it play therapy. I have sat with students and we've made friendship bracelets. And in the midst of those friendship bracelets, all sorts of stuff comes out because their mind is a little bit preoccupied with something else. And there's a comfort there. Like you feel safe. If you want kids to talk, they got to feel safe. Drawing has been a phenomenal resource in getting children to open up. I remember when I was teaching, I was over at Carver Elementary in San Francisco, and I was working with a bunch of students because after school teacher had called out that day, and Kenny always says I had 45 kids following me. I don't know that it was 45. I don't know how many it was, but however many. One of the activities that I had, because I was pulling kids one-on-one to work with them on homework, was for you to do art. Here's some markers, here's some pencils, do art. One of the students drew what looked like, I would say, like a stick figure and this blob coming out of their body. And I went over and I was like, what's that? And he said, my uncle dead. And I was like, what? He's like, my uncle dead. Him dead. My uncle dead. So this kid, this child that all day has been distracted, that I've gotten an email about because he, is acting up in class. He's not doing his work. He's reserved. Is processing walking in and seeing his uncle be murdered on the floor. And me being one of the people in his life as his educator was not informed. Nobody told me. The parents didn't call and tell me. No other teachers told me. I was unsure if they knew. Nobody said, hey, this child experienced this thing, and we need to make sure to keep a good eye on them. I was never informed. And what ended up opening up that Pandora's box and getting the child the help that they need was the fact that they were sitting at the table coloring, doing arts, utilize things like art, jewelry making, painting, sometimes even jump rope or hopscotch, pausing a movie. Utilize things that are going to put the child in a space where they feel comfortable and safe enough to open up, because typically they want to, and they don't have the tools to be able to do so. They don't have the words to be able to articulate what it is that they've seen and experienced, especially when they've experienced so much trauma. Now, here's the other thing that I want to say that I had to change in terms of my perspective as an educator. One of the things about growing up with so much trauma and working with children who have experienced a great deal of trauma is that your perspective of what is considered a big deal is drastically skewed. Because when we experience what we consider to be a huge situation, and then somebody to the right says, I'm having a hard time because they didn't have my flavor ice cream today, you laugh, right? It becomes hard to empathize with how they feel on their level because your perspective is skewed. And so a lot of the personal work that I've had to do as an educator, aside from unpacking my own trauma, is understanding that people in general respond to situations completely differently. Our nervous system is different. What we're prepared to happen is different. The way that we see the world is drastically different person to person to person. So the way that my child responds to things that I think are no big deal, but extremely big deal for her, they're valid. And I had to stop telling her she's being dramatic, even though at times I feel like she is, because the way that she processes whatever it is that's taking place is very real for her. So when you're working with children and they are going through a period of grief and they're dealing with loss and they are responding so vastly differently, you want to try your best to see it from the perspective of that child, given their nervous system, their sensory sensitivities, their triggers, their backgrounds, so on and so forth. The next resource I want to share is Wonders and Worries. It's a nonprofit organization that provides professional support for children and teens whose parents are ill or dying. So they offer individual sessions, group support, parent consultations. Why I appreciate it is that grief does not start at a point of death unless it was a surprise, right? Unless it just completely threw us off. There is a process that takes place where a person is starting to pass away and those emotions begin, because you can look in front and you can see, wow, my grandmother, she used to run with me, or she used to be able to pick me up. She used to drive a car, and now her body is no longer operating in the same way. There's a grief there. There's a grief there because your relationship with that person has shifted based on the changes of their body. And when we talk about grief, we typically talk about it at a point of death and the loss of a person, but we don't often enough speak about what has led up to that. Speak about if that child or that person has viewed the transition taking place, because there's a grief there as well. My husband, his grandmother passed away from dementia, but before she passed away, before we got to the level of a funeral, he would go and spend time with her in her state of losing memory, not being able to move the same and not being able to pick things up. Her fingers and her body is not working in the same way, and he had to experience that. And so again, grief starts before the end. It is a process. And I appreciate Wonders and Worries because I feel like it's one of few organizations that understands that process and that tries to start that intervention work before we get to the point of a funeral. Now, with all these resources, the books, the websites, the other things that I'll send out in a newsletter, preview them first. There is never a time where I will tell you to do something because I said so. Open it up. Make sure it makes sense for your family. Make sure you understand it before you introduce it to your child. So protect your children by making sure the resources that you're giving them, the books, the TV, whatever else, works for them before you expose them to that. Best practices at home. First is to have a conversation around their emotions. And this should really be something that's consistent. You've moved to a new school, talk to them about it. There is a change in friendship, talk to them about it. Try to make sure that you are a resource that is available to them to have open and candid conversations so that you know what's going on with them as best as possible. Make sure that you utilize the other things that I was talking about earlier, jewelry making, coloring, cooking dinner together, as an avenue and a way to get them to open up. But truly see your child so that you notice the changes, because before a child can articulate what it is that they're grieving or what it is that they're experiencing, there are things about them that will tell you. I will notice when a student is going through something. If they walk into my classroom and they have a particular attitude, if they walk into my classroom and their backpack is missing, oh, you were rushed, your shoes are on the opposite foot, you must have almost missed the bus. When you look at children and you notice their patterns of behavior, because they always have telltale signs, it will let you know that something is going on. So my first tip for best practice on anything is to watch your child. Second tip is, because we're talking about grief, it is likely that you are going through your own grieving process while that child is going through a grieving process. This year I lost my son, and it hurt very drastically. I was pregnant. We thought a baby was coming. We actually thought it was twins. Then there was one, and then there was none. So I had and have my own process of emotions that I'm trying to manage. And then my daughter has hers, and then my husband. So I am trying to manage them, help their emotions and process their emotions, while also making sure that I am protecting and loving on myself. And it's hard to do, but you need to make sure that you are in a space to be able to hold those conversations. And if you're not, you can't. I think as parents, we believe like we have to do it all. Like we are that one person for our child or our children. And so if we don't take it on, nobody else will. And that can't be further from the truth. Even if you don't have a big community, if you are not in a space to be reminded of the loss of your child. If that is going to hurt or harm or impact, you're going to have to create intentional spaces for you to have those conversations. Sunday at 1 o'clock, I'm all open, all ears, but baby, I can't do it until then. And then get them counseling, get them additional resources and support, call on an aunt or a neighbor, go to a church home to be able to help. Because if you can't, you cannot. And us adults and grown-ups, we're just big kids, right? Like, we have very real emotions as well. I'll give another example, because in the same household, you again process grief differently. We had a welcoming ceremony for the baby that we lost this year, before we knew that we had lost him. And so we had this welcoming ceremony, and the welcoming ceremony comes with like this feast and a list of things that we're doing to welcome in baby. And then baby didn't come. And so that kind of agenda that was made, my daughter recently decided to put it on the refrigerator. And she wants it there as this daily like reminder and welcoming of who would have been her brother. And I am realizing that I don't want to get up to go grab a juice out the fridge and then be reminded that my baby is not here. I'm not at that point of I'm not at that stage, right? And so in having this conversation, you know how I say, like, y'all help me as much as I help you. And having this conversation with you all and providing resources and information, I'm recognizing that I'm going to have to talk to my daughter. That is something she can put in her room if she wants to. She has her own space. She has her own notebooks and her own journals and her own binders. And she is so welcome to have this agenda in her space so that she can see it and feel it and hold it as much as she needs to. But as the woman who lost the baby, who went through the physical and mental process of losing this kid, I cannot right now. And that's going to have to be okay. So the second best practice is to make sure that you are in a place, okay? Let's hear me when I say that you can continue to receive what is being thrown at you by way of that child. And if you cannot, you're going to have to find an alternative, because we need you here too, and we need you to be okay too. Hear me when I say, okay. The third best practice, normalize changes. Don't act like they don't exist. Don't ignore them. So often we'll move a state and it's like, we're here now. Let's keep a happy attitude. And you should keep a happy attitude, but you should also acknowledge that changes are huge things for everybody involved. And if you start to normalize that, hey, I know that this is a new soccer team for you, and it's probably going to be some emotions that come up. I'm able to connect if you want to, or if you're not able to connect, phone a friend, phone an auntie. Hey, you can. I throw my daughter on FaceTime as much as I can. Go call your aunt, okay? Have them connect, but don't hide or shy away from whatever it is that is happening. Round this out, we're going to talk about when to seek help. All right, Erica, I've done your little art activities. We've done jewelry making. I've tried to go to, the websites you recommended. I'm not seeing any emotional changes. When your child is angry at a level of like rage, wrath, they're slamming doors, they're shutting down. Hey, what's wrong? Nothing. And they're going there. It's probably time for you to bring in somebody else. That's when to seek help. If your child is completely not communicating anymore, they used to be talkative and now they're completely withdrawn since this change of grief has taken place, it's probably time to bring somebody in. If you are not mentally able to manage, to support, and to hold that child with where they are, then it's time, what I'm about to say, yes sir, to bring somebody in. Now, what that somebody looks like, regardless of religion, feel like churches are and have been historically the staple of community. Okay, that's what they have historically been. I would encourage you to connect with the local church that you feel comfortable with. Again, regardless of religion. Why? Because churches are nonprofit. I don't know if you know that, but they are nonprofit. They're charity work to get the community the resources that they need. Yes, there's also a religious element, but there is also community in the church. And at that point, you need community. The other place that I would go to seek help is your school. See if your school has a guidance counselor. See if your school has resources to, help your child to get counseling or therapy or whatever they might need. Join the PTA. The PTA, the Parent Teacher Association, is one of the most valuable things you can do to meet other parents and to make friendships out of that, and to find resources and adequate help for your child, because the PTA parents, they be knowing all sorts of stuff. Okay. And then the next and last resource that I would say in order to seek help is, if it's not getting better, it's not changing, and you're starting to notice some hard emotional shifts, talk to your doctor. We think of our doctor as like, oh, I broke a bone, let me go to the doctors. And although that is one element, the doctor also tends to have resources in terms of mental health, support groups, group support, or all of these other things. So if you go into the doctor and you say, hey, I noticed these shifts, they might be able to put in a referral in for something more that your kid may need. And all of those things are applicable to you too. You go to the PTA for yourself, you go find a friend. You go to church for yourself, you go find some help. You go to the doctor for yourself and say, what's going on? Everything that I'm saying about your child, I encourage you and push you to find for yourself, because grief is nothing pretty. Okay. And you might be grieving the change that you're seeing within your child. There are days that I miss when my baby was small, quieter, easier to manage. There are days that I miss when it wasn't so much paperwork and response emails and dance camp and this class. There are days that I miss the simplicity of having her. And baby, that's a grief. There's grief there. All right. Here are some common questions that I get asked in regards to grief or emotions. One is, should I take my child to a funeral? You should take your child to a funeral if that is your cultural belief and background. Okay. So if in your family you acknowledge people, you acknowledge their life, and you celebrate their life by way of a funeral, culturally speaking, you should bring that child. That is part of your culture. It kind of reminds me of when speech and language pathologists or other people have recommended in the educational field that if your child speaks two languages, they need to stop speaking the other one to help them learn English. I completely disagree. I don't touch culture. Culture is so precious to me. It's so important. It's how we pass down our traditions. And so, if culturally speaking, your family does wakes, they do funerals, they have a dove release ceremony, whatever those practices are that are typically, other children are involved in, bring your child in, because they have to understand how it is that you go about saying goodbye, or in some religions and cultures, saying hello. The next question that I get often is, all of this talking might be a lot. Isn't it better to just kind of like protect them from the pain, or like, how do I just protect them from the pain? It's impossible. And as a person who used to be a helicopter mom, because speaking of grief, my daughter too was a twin. We've had a lot of loss, but she was a twin. And so when I lost the other child that I was pregnant with, it made me be super paranoid. Like, I didn't want her to climb too high. I didn't want her to go, too much in the ocean. I didn't want her to, there were so many things that I was like, very nervous about, because I wanted to protect her from pain. I was scared of her getting hurt, and I wanted to protect myself from pain. And the reality is, pain is a part of life. And so it's less about protecting your child from pain and making sure that they have the resources to process that pain as it comes. So, no, they get to have their emotions. They're human, and you can't protect them from the inevitable. So let's prepare them for what is to come. And the last conversation I had with a parent, one of the things was like, I just feel like I don't ever know what to say. Her son's turtle, or it had passed away. And like, there were these times where he kind of shut down around the loss of this pet. And she was like, I don't know what to say, and I don't know what to do. And in those situations, you sit or stand. Shout out to Donnie McKirkland. Okay. Just stay present. And you can literally be like, I don't have words, but I hear you. And sometimes that's enough. Sometimes just knowing that a person is there with you, experiencing whatever it is, helps to be able to process. You don't need to make up a bunch of stuff. You don't need to go through your notes. You just need to be as present as you can while loving on yourself and growing in the process. Now, I know that was a lot. It's going to be in a newsletter. Don't worry about it. If you signed up for my newsletter, you will get all of this and then some. It is my goal with this channel to give you the information that I have and for you to give me information back, and we can just continue to grow together. Thank you so much for learning with me this week. I hope your little love the read out louds, or at least learn something from it. And I hope that you found something to hang on to in this segment. Lastly, as a lifelong reading specialist, advocate, and lover of children's picture books, I want to introduce you to the Empathy Library. It is my Pay It Forward initiative that removes the red tape when it comes to getting intentional books to children that deserve them, but come from communities that cannot necessarily afford them. It is the most straightforward book drop program you could possibly imagine. You go online, you choose to donate money that allows books to get purchased. Those books then go directly to students. We have receipts on the website. Everybody from educators, Boys and Girls Club, public schools on down have received books free of charge by way of your generosity and thoughtfulness. On the flip side, if you are an educator, if you're a community leader of some sort and you need free books, I got a wait list, but go ahead and get on it. Sign up so that as those donations come in, you will eventually come up once you're verified, and we will send you books to get to your babies, because everybody should have books. Books make the world go round, okay? So that's all for our week on grief, but every single week we have a new topic with read-alouds, with reviews, and closing out with the Teacher Lady Speaks section, which wraps it all up to get you the information you need on that topic. Lastly, this is your reminder to take care of yourself first, because only then can you be equipped to take care of others. That is a word. I be coming with the words. I be coming. Thanks for watching, for learning with me, and for being part of this beautiful book-loving community. Until next time, remember to enjoy the moment, or go be a joy in the moment. Bye.